So it's part 3 of lesson 2. We've set up our HTML form, and we have a save page where we've kind of walked through the process of what this is going to look like. So I want to create 3 variables, and for consistency, we may as well match the variable names to the field names. So we'll create variables called name, year, founded, and website. So I want to populate my name variable from my form input in the post array. This $_post name, that is referencing this input that also is called name in our form. Those have to match exactly. If I called it artist name here, I'd have to call it artist name here. And remember, as we said at the start of class, our variables are loosely typed. So we're just creating variables. We do not give them data types. We don't say that name is a string, year founded is an integer. Before we write any more code, we could just check and make sure these values are actually correct. Maybe we'll just print out the artist name to the screen first. So let's try our form this way first, just to make sure that the values are getting passed properly. We can read them. If we enter ABC in the name box, our save page should print ABC. So I'll test my form. I'll put in a value of some artist and click save. My save page prints out exactly what was in the input box. What will happen if my code looks like this instead? So I've changed line 11. If I resubmit my form, there's 3 possibilities. It could still print some artist. I could get a blank screen, or I could get an error. Which one of those do you think is going to happen? Blank screen, I heard. Blank screen? You're going to guess error? You're thinking error? Error? We'll resubmit. Yep. Undefined index. Remember, so this $_post, it's an array. So what this error means is there is no element, no field in the array with capital N name. It doesn't exist. So whenever you see this message, when you're processing a form, if you see an undefined index, that means there is a discrepancy between the element in the post array you're looking for and the actual name in your form. They're not named the same thing. So you need to check. It's a common error. Probably almost everybody in the class is going to do this at some point. We'll call our form input X, and we'll try to refer to something else in the post array on our save page. We get undefined index. So using a standard naming convention is important. So what I would recommend is use camel case and use it everywhere. So I used camel case in my database, so year founded, for example. I used camel case in the name of my form input, and I also used camel case in the name of the variable. So because I'm consistent, I don't have to worry about what casing did I use. I know I'm always using camel case for naming everything. My columns, my tables, my inputs, and my variables. All standard, always be camel case. Okay. So now we need our database connection. This is the same code we put in our connection test. But I'm not going to copy and paste it. I'm actually going to type it from scratch. This is a famous job interview question for co-ops and recent graduates if you're working with PHP. Write a connection string in a PHP page to connect to a database. So I'm not going to copy and paste it. I'm going to type it over and over again whenever we need it. I suggest you do the same until you start to learn it. We're going to create a new PTO connection. So you can use whichever server you want. Again, if you have access to your own AWS account, use your AWS server. If you need to use my Loosefoot database, here's the connection. And the DB name is, and then our username. So that's my Loosefoot version. If you're using AWS, it'll look like this. So use AWS if you can, use the first version. If you weren't able to connect, use the second version. What isn't bad practice to make sure we remember to disconnect is after we write the connection line, we can write the code to disconnect here. Disconnecting is easy, just destroy the connection object. Now our page doesn't do anything yet. I'm going to try it out anyway, just to make sure I don't get a connection error. If my connection fails, I'll get a message in the browser saying the database connection failed, and there'll be a description. So I'm just going to refresh and resubmit. So there's no error, so that's good. If I have, for example, an invalid credential, I put in the password wrong, I'll get some kind of PTO error. And in this case, the error I get is access denied because the password I put in is invalid. I have one request. Every one of us is going to get these errors at some point in the semester, guaranteed. And I'm happy to help you debug them. However, before you send me an email and say I'm getting a database error, I ask, read the error message. And the actual error message is usually right here. It'll tell you if the credential's invalid, if the server's offline, if the table you're trying to connect to doesn't exist with that name. Often the error message will tell you what's wrong and you'll know how to fix it. And if you can't fix it, by all means, contact me and I'll help you sort it out. Okay, but the error messages are generally fairly descriptive. So if you see access denied, it's a good chance you're not using the right, you maybe have a mistake in the username and password. I fixed that error. Error message goes away. So now we need to write the SQL command we're going to need in order to save new artist to the artist table. What does this SQL statement look like? How would we do it? Well, what is this code doing? Is this inserting data into the database? Right, so this is just creating the table. So we don't want to use create. What command do we want instead? Yep, we're going to insert. What's after insert? Make Mazir proud. Aiden? Yep. What table do we want to insert into? So the name of our table, what goes in here? Yes, somebody said, who said the column names? Correct. So we want name, year founded, and website. So we insert into our table. We have a comma separated list of the columns. Then when we have the word values, now in your database class, we would just insert the values here, wouldn't we? We would insert we've got our 3 variables on lines 11, 12, and 13, name, year founded, and website. When we're working with PHP, we don't want to just inject those 3 values directly here. And there's a couple of reasons why. We could do it and it would work, but it's not recommended. Can anybody suggest why it wouldn't be a good idea to just insert the name, year founded, and website values here? Nick? Absolutely. Okay, so we may have something like this. If we just inject the name in here, in our value, it's going to cause a problem. Why? Right, because we need to put single quotes around the string values, but this string has a single quote in the middle. So then we have an odd number of quotations, it's going to crash. That's one problem. There's an even bigger problem. That is a significant problem you've pointed out. So that's kind of an accident that might break the code. There's also non-accidents that would break the code. That could be, yep. Could be, right? We're only allowing 50 characters. We could, yep. Yeah, if there was a % sign in there or a star. All those things are accidents and they could all happen. There's a way somebody could break this deliberately if we just inject our variables right in the string. What might that look like, or why would somebody do it? Right, maybe the band name is drop table artists. Right? Or select star from users. What's this called? This hacking technique. SQL injection. So if we just insert the variables however they came in, and we just insert those into the string, somebody could run SQL commands and destroy, manipulate our database. It happens all the time. All the time. I used to set my websites up with error handling, so whenever errors happened, it would email me the error messages. We'll look at doing this in a few weeks. And some of my clients, every morning I would wake up and there would be 24 error attempts where I could see the SQL injection attempts that hackers were putting into the forms. But I had error handling and I didn't inject the values directly into my insert statements or my queries. Okay, it happens all the time. It's the single most common web application vulnerability, right? Because remember, our applications are often public. Anybody can get to them. So people can and will do this. Trust me. I probably even have some of the old emails in an inbox. I'll dig one out sometime and show you what those attempts look like. So it's a terrible idea for us to just take name, year, founded, and throw them into our insert statement. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to set up parameters instead. So this colon in front of them So notice you see the colon in front of all three of these. So these don't represent values, those represent placeholders or parameters. So we don't want to inject the variables directly. We're setting up 3 placeholders instead. So now we are going to need one other variable, and that's called a command object, and that will allow us to populate each one of these parameters safely with the right type of data, the right length, as Magnus, correct? The right length of data, as Magnus said, and make sure that object will automatically strip out SQL injection attempts for us. I'm going to create a new variable where we take our database connection, and this connection has a method called prepare. My PHP storm nicely pops up for me. So set up our connection to use this SQL statement, but don't run it yet, just set it up. And then our command object has this method called bind param. So we're going to call it 3 times. So we can take each variable and assign that value to the proper parameter. So our first parameter is name, and we're filling it from our name variable. I'll explain what we're doing here. We set up a name placeholder in our SQL. So we're saying take our name variable from line 11, it comes from our form, and assign that value into our name parameter. And PHP, the language itself, is loosely typed, but PDO, the data access library, isn't loosely typed. So we can actually say, hey, this is a string and max 50 characters. So if they try to give us something too long, this will validate it. This bind param method that comes with the PDO library, it also automatically checks against SQL statements, and it will escape them. So if we try to create a band called drop table artists, rather than execute that query, it will actually just convert that to a literal string. It won't run. So it's preventing SQL injection. So we're going to, we won't fill our year founded with our year founded variable. And this one is going to be a int. We only need the length for strings. For numeric data types, we don't have to specify a length. There's a max length already set for integers. And then we need to bind the website parameter as well. Also as a 50, I think we did, how long did we do? 100 character string. All of this is just setting up the SQL and trying to do it safely to prevent SQL injection. If we reload the page right now, we still won't have saved anything. This is all setup code. Nothing is executed against the database yet. So using these steps, it's optional. We could have just put in $name, $year founded, $website here. And it would work so long as there was no special characters or SQL injection. But the extra code I've highlighted in blue, this is recommended. I'd like to show you how to do things the right way, not just the simplest and shortest way. I want to show you the proper way to do it. So just to make sure that this code is right, I'm just going to resubmit my form. Again, it's still just going to print the artist name. It won't save anything yet. I just want to make sure that nothing we've done in this section causes an error. So I'll just save no error here, so that's encouraging. But there's still nothing in our database. If I check, if I run a select query in my table, there's no data. So all of this setup code is now building up to the most important line on the whole page, which is actually performing the save. So we take our command and we just call execute. So our command is using our connection, it's using our SQL, and we've populated the 3 parameters from our 3 variables. So now when we run the code, it should save to our database. And somebody mentioned at the bottom, you could show a message. We might just say echo saved. So now we can try this out, see if it works. If you are using your own database, you're connected to AWS successfully, put anything you want in there, I don't care. If you're using our shared database, you can put in any trial data you like, but what I would ask is, in order to make the site kind of function the way we want it to, pick a real band. Look up a year. If they have a website, put it in. Don't just put in ABC, because our site's going to kind of look like a mess that way. It's going to be hard to navigate. So if you're using my database, put in any band you like, but put in real data. So I'm going to try this out. I'll just go and look for the information I need in terms of the website. So don't insert the same data as me, insert a band that you like. I'm going to try and save Green Day to my shared database. Okay, I got an artist save message, so that's good. That doesn't necessarily mean it's saved. It means we didn't get an error. So now if I re-query my database, I've got one record here, starting at artist ID 10,000. If I go back and add somebody else, I should be able to add, and my database should give me sorry? But yeah, years, I'll go with 2005. Okay, because later on we're going to be able to edit these, just not today. We'll add that functionality in a couple of weeks. So I can save that one. And if I run my query again, I now have two artists. If you're using my database, that's fine. You can test your form, add some real data in there. I don't mind. It's fine. If we have a big list, no problem. If you're connected to your own database, you can add anything you like. So my pages seem to run on my local host. The last thing I'm going to do is upload these to AWS. I want to try them out on AWS as well. So I'm going to open up my music library. I'm going to upload artist and save artist to the web server. And now I'll try my artist page here. So when I run it live from the web server connected to the same database, so now I've got, so my file will work either locally or from the web server, either one. Question? Yep. Okay, are you using, you're trying to upload to AWS? Yeah. Okay, are you using the new credential or the old one? Okay, I'll have to have a look at it. The old one should work. I know the new ones have not been working, but the old ones should. Okay. If you don't get it to run on the server for today, that's okay. You can always use your local web server and you can use the Loosefoot, the shared database. That's fine. I'm working with our technician to get the AWS, the new one's connection sorted out, but I can look at your old one. Does anybody have any questions about what's happening on this page? I know it's a fair bit of code, but we basically need all of these steps in order to properly process this. The link is here. It's here. The link is also on D2L in Tools and Resources. So right here in Tools and Resources as well. Okay. So it's here permanently for him. Okay, good. Yes, unfortunately, it's not very forgiving. One typo will, you could write 1,000 lines of perfect PHP code, and one character will cause the page not to load. That is the nature of it. So if you're more of a big picture thinker and less of a detailed person, you may need a little extra focus when we're working with this technology. Yeah. Right. Yes, it can take a while. Okay. So that's all the code we're going to write today. I've pushed it to GitHub. So if you do not have it working, here's my recommendation for you. Use the video on YouTube, use the code on GitHub as a reference, and make sure that you have 2 working forms before next week's class. Okay? If you're really lost or your setup is at the point where you can't really run anything, I have office hours appointments Monday and Tuesday. So book an appointment, come in and see me, and I can help you get caught up. Okay. So next week, what we want to do is we want to build pages where we can query the database, pull the list of artists and display them in the browser, and then potentially click on an artist and see just that one artist on a separate page. So we'll have a list and we'll have a single record. So today we are dealing with the create function. Next week we'll do reading data. But until you can create data, you're not going to have anything to read. Okay. All right, and we will have a quiz next week on what we did today. So how to create data and insert. Okay, have a good week. I'll see you all next week. Be right with you, Stella. I'm just going to